Western Canada's largest sporting event this year is the 9th time the event has visited Vancouver as part of the World Rugby Sevens series. Tickets are on sale now at vansevens.com, starting from just $40 per day. And if you want to go, we've got a 4-pack of tickets for the entire weekend to give away. Text hashtag sevens, that's SEVENS, to 778-402-9680 for your chance to win. We will be giving away a 4-pack each week until the event, which is at the end of February, folks, February 23rd to 25th. Text hashtag sevens to 778-402-9680. That is the sponsor of our first segment. Our first segment is titled Elias Lindholm Mania. The title of the episode, Harmon, is titled Lindholm Mania. And Kevin Woodley's going to join us later. He's also in the title. But Lindholm, Elias Lindholm. Has anything, I don't want to say the word changed. Have you thought of any new takes about Elias Lindholm since we gave our instant reaction to the trade when we went live? What was it, like Friday night? When did we go live? I don't even remember. No, Wednesday night, excuse me. That was the last time we talked, and that was obviously the last time we talked about Elias Lindholm.
Yeah, so I had a chance to continue watching some more tape on Friday morning. I dropped an article at The Athletic breaking down a bunch of film on Lindholm. So there were a couple things that stood out. Number one, of course, with us having the understanding with practice lines that Lindholm's going to start on Pettersson's wing, I am really curious to see what Lindholm's two-way play could look like from the wall. Because one thing that was interesting, and I mean, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the offensive fit with Pettersson. That's another intriguing point. But from a two-way perspective, watching a lot of Calgary's games this year and specifically keying in on Lindholm, it was interesting that Lindholm was always smart positionally. He was always on the right side of the puck. You never really caught him out of position, generally made sound reads, but he wasn't overly disruptive, right? He wasn't the type of player that when the other team had possession, that Lindholm's consistently stripping players of the puck down low or intercepting a lot of passes. It was a lot of prevent defense. It wasn't a case of him winning a lot of battles and enforcing changes in possession, which is what you expect from a really, really high-end defensive player. And it's actually, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the PK impact as well. That's what I saw from him on the PK. I was like, wow, I was blown away with how Lindholm looked at times on the PK. But at 5-on-5, put it this way, you're not watching him going, wow, that's a guy that finished second place in Selke Trophy not too long ago. But at the same time, you would see sparks of, okay, I'm interested to see how that skill set could translate on the wing. And what I mean by that is there was, in the most recent Battle of Alberta game, there was a play where Calgary was on the power play. They dump it in. Stuart Skinner goes behind the net to collect it. Lindholm is the first man in on the forecheck, and he's flying in, nearly cleanly picks the pass off. Ultimately, the clearance deflects off Lindholm's stick, goes out of play. But I'm like, wow, that's a burst of speed that when he's just typically playing center at 5-on-5, he has that pace, but he doesn't consistently show that motor. He's not constantly hounding the puck. He's not, again, being a really disruptive force. But then you see that speed and you're like, okay, now if he's playing on Pettersson's wing and his job isn't necessarily so much staying above the play, it isn't, I'm the F3. It's, okay, I'm a winger. My job is to get in on the forecheck, like that clip in that Edmonton game. I'm excited to see if he can be more disruptive, if he can really pursue the puck and win a lot more battles, because the type of speed and defensive intelligence he has, he's going to be able to do things away from the puck that Kuzmenko doesn't.
How about Mikheyev? Like in terms of how much better of a defensive player is Elias Lindholm than Ilya Mikheyev?
I think there should be a difference,
okay,
especially in the PK is where, again, I noticed it. At 5-on-5, again, I didn't see the most disruptive version of Lindholm, but again, part of it, I wonder as well, is playing in that situation in Calgary, doesn't have the best line mates. I bet that team as a whole doesn't have the best vibe around it, considering how much they've underperformed.
Calgary.
Jonathan Huberdeau underperforming.
They have to live in Alberta.
And they have to live in Alberta
during the winter.
And he probably knows that he's on his way out, right? So I wonder if that affects his engagement, because there were also plays where, again, I'd see a moment where Lindholm has a chance to win a puck battle, and I don't want to say he's going in half-heartedly, but he's not going in with what I think is his max output, max intensity. So I think the fresh start will help him as well. So yeah, I do think put it this way. Mikheyev and Lindholm's defensive impact this year has been pretty similar, which is to say at 5-on-5, it hasn't been spectacular. But I think Lindholm's tools and him having the fresh start in Vancouver, playing the wing next to Pettersson, I think he should be more disruptive.
Similar to the conversation around his offensive game, where you look at his numbers and you say, okay, when he plays with Elias Pettersson, he should be able to do this. And the take I gave on Wednesday was Elias Pettersson was able to make Sam Lafferty work in a top 6 for like a month. So he should be able to make Elias Lindholm work. This was what Lindholm had to say when he was talking about the trade yesterday. And on the topic of knowing that the trade was coming, something that you just said, he said, obviously, I've been knowing that it was coming for quite some time, and I've been kind of waiting to see what happens and what's going to happen and where I'm going to go and so on. So, I mean, it's good for me to come here not too late and close to the deadline and have some time now to get acclimated and to get to know the guys in the last 30 plus games together. More of that is in scenes from Canucks practice, which was up yesterday on CanucksArmy.com. I just find it interesting that they pulled the trigger so early, and I like it. We saw them, set the market, beat the market, and I think it's safe to say they beat the market when you look that Sean Monahan went for a first and a third, although the third is a conditional third, so it's not for sure, but a first round pick going for Sean Monahan, and obviously that conditional third as well. I think it's safe to say that the Canucks did beat the market on Elias Lindholm, and I think it was good that they did that and pulled the trigger when they did. The thing I've started to think more about Lindholm, Harm, just as I kind of dove in over the weekend and started to think about it a little more, aside from the fact that he wasn't on the Canucks team at the All-Star game, which was early controversy. I'm joking, of course. But the thing I started thinking more about with Lindholm was the Strongside faceoff stuff. And Tocchet spoke about that when he was on, I think he was on the Sportsnet broadcast talking about it. And he said if he's on a line with Pettersson, which we now know he is, as we all kind of thought he would be, Pettersson can take the faceoff when it's on his strong side. Lindholm, who's right-handed instead of left-handed, can take it when it's on his strong side. And look, I know there's a lot of discourse around strong side faceoffs in many of the circles that you and I are a part of, but it matters. Like, it does matter to some extent. And not only the strong side, weak side stuff, but Lindholm is a exceptional talent in the faceoff dot, over 55%. He's going to win a lot of draws, and he's going to provide the Canucks with something that, hey, like we talked about how much, Pia Suter hitting and Teddy Bluger hitting is filling the third line center role, something that the Canucks have been chasing for so long. Canucks have been chasing a right-handed center who can win faceoffs for almost just as long as they've been chasing that third line center.
Absolutely. You're going to also notice the difference the more the stakes rise heading into the playoffs, because that's where situationally your late in games, especially if you're up a goal or even if you're trailing and there's a huge offensive zone faceoff draw, those are the situations where you're desperately going to need a win to, whether it's hold a lead or climb back into it. It's also going to have a significant impact on the PK. And this is where special teams faceoffs matter a ton. It's not going to have as much of an impact on the power play, because on the power play, you can choose which side you want the faceoff, and JT Miller's pretty good in the draw. But on the PK, that's where it's going to be a significant advantage, because we've known in the past when the Canucks have had penalty killing woes, oftentimes it stems from they can't win the initial faceoff and they get hemmed in. Even with this iteration of the Canucks PK, they are masterful at defending their blue line when the opposition has to go back and regroup. They're trying to enter the zone. They're trying to get set up. Their forecheck, the formation they have, how well they plug the middle, force puck carriers to the outside, and then win those battles is so disruptive. Where the Canucks PK sometimes, especially earlier in the year, ran into problems is when they lose that initial draw, and then it's, okay, if they're defending in zone, they're not particularly great at disrupting passing lanes, at getting that first clearance. Lindholm's going to have a strong impact there. And even just looking at his usage, since the 2021-22 season, he's logged the sixth most PK minutes of all NHL forwards, and the results have been pretty strong. Lindholm's goals against rate ranks 23rd best among 77 forwards with at least 300 PK minutes since that season. Again, even just watching some clips in that most recent Battle of Alberta game, there was a play where this one, ironically, Lindholm lost the initial draw, but as Edmonton's power play was trying to get set up, Edmonton had the puck along the boards, played it up to Bouchard. Lindholm made such a quick read, immediately went full speed at Bouchard at the point. Bouchard faked as if he was going to try and go to the middle, tried to pull off a move. Lindholm didn't bite, immediately poked it out of the zone. Edmonton then regrouped in the neutral zone, tried to enter the zone, rimmed it around. Lindholm beat Zach Hyman to the puck, got it out, and you're like, okay, this is exactly the type of defensive player you'd love to add to this PK. So I'm excited to see his impact shorthanded.
Okay, so we focus a lot on his defensive game, his play away from the puck. Versatile player. Like, he's a very, very versatile player. We talked a lot about the offensive side when we broke down the trade on Wednesday, but I want to touch on that again because the thing that I'm starting to really think about is if this guy's playing with an elite puck distributor like Elias Pettersson, probably the best line mate he's ever played with. Like, do you think...
No.
You don't think it's safe to say that? Because I think the only reason I would stop that argument is because he had two very elite line mates. Very elite. In Johnny Gaudreau in that season and Matthew Tkachuk. 3 40-goal scorers all on the same line on Calgary. That's special. And Ilya Mikheyev's not a 40-goal scorer, right? I'd say Elias Pettersson is better than Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau. And it's a hard argument
right now.
Of course. That's what I was getting at, yeah.
Gaudreau at the time was having an MVP caliber season. That's best season he's ever had. And seriously, you watch some of the clips, you're like, that is not the Johnny Gaudreau that I've seen recently.
No, he got his bag and he stopped playing. I've gone over this. He did the Pierre-Luc Dubois.
So, I mean, fine. If you want to make that argument, regardless of whether you're in the camp that Pettersson right now is better than Gaudreau was that season or vice versa, you're splitting hairs.
Exactly. Yeah.
The bigger difference is he had 2 of them. So I'm not going to go to that extent, but
totally.
It's still obviously a massive upgrade from this season. When some of the recent tape I was watching, it's like Jonathan Huberdeau.
Yeah.
And he's not really able to make an impact at all. And really that passing matters a lot because I went back and for that article last week, I tracked every goal Lindholm scored in the regular season and playoffs in that 2021-22 season. So he had 47 goals between regular season and playoffs. 29 of those came directly from either a cross seam pass or a low to high pass where the playmaker was below the offensive zone faceoff dots. So those are the types of difficult passing plays that you need a high-end playmaker to make. Lindholm was, of course, the one finding the soft ice in and around the high slot area. Those high slot goals, by the way, have completely dried up. You look at the NHL Edge data, that year, he was in the 99th percentile. I think he had 20 goals from the quote-unquote mid-danger areas in the high slot. This year is 3.
3.
Yeah. Which is around 3 isn't a low number. It's just what averages.
In comparison to him before.
Yeah, it's a colossal drop-off.
So he's going to increase that number.
Yeah, exactly.
In Vancouver. He's got that quick release, and that's the thing that you and I focus so much on. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.